There are stories that begin quietly, like a soft sunrise slowly warming the world. And then there are stories that begin with a storm, striking the heart before the mind even understands what is happening. This story begins with a storm, not the kind that shakes buildings, but the kind that shakes the soul. It begins with Olivia Carter standing alone in her glass-walled office high above Chicago. Night lights of the city glittering below her like a kingdom she ruled but never belonged to. She had power, wealth, respect, and the kind of success people spent their whole lives chasing. Yet in that moment, with her palms pressed against the cold glass, she felt an emptiness so deep it echoed inside her chest. She had climbed every mountain, conquered every obstacle, defeated every challenge, except the one she refused to admit she feared the most: love. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that change hearts, make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe. It helps us bring more inspiring stories your way. Olivia's life had been shaped by ambition before anything else. Raised by a single mother who worked 3 jobs to keep them afloat, she had learned early that depending on love was dangerous, fragile, unpredictable. So she built her world with the things she could control: numbers, strategies, deadlines, and walls. Thick, unbreakable walls that no one was ever allowed to climb. By 36, she was the CEO of one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the United States. People admired her, feared her, envied her. Some even adored her from afar. But no one truly knew her. Not really. The price of her success was a kind of loneliness no one wanted to talk about. She spent more nights with spreadsheets than with friends. She missed birthdays, dinners, weddings, and every quiet moment that made her life feel full. She was universally respected, yet utterly alone. Every man she met seemed to want the version of her they imagined. The polished CEO, the power, the name, the status. Never the tired woman who cried in her car some nights because she didn't know how to be anything but strong. But life has a way of changing even the most guarded hearts when they least expect it. The turning point came on a chilly October morning when Olivia's company hosted a community outreach event in a modest Chicago neighborhood. It was meant to be a simple public relations effort, a day spent with local families, offering tech workshops, free meals, and school supplies. Olivia attended because CEOs were expected to show up, smile, and shake hands. She never imagined it would be the day that altered everything she believed about herself, her world, and her heart. The event buzzed with children's laughter, the smell of grilled food, and volunteers bustling around with bright t-shirts and clipboards. Olivia moved through the crowd with her usual calm composure, nodding politely at people, offering practiced smiles, checking her watch every few minutes. She was ready to leave as soon as the cameras stopped flashing. But fate had other plans. Near the edge of the park, she noticed a small boy, maybe 8 or 9, trying to fix a broken tablet, frustration tightening his little shoulders. His fingers moved carefully but hopelessly across the cracked screen. Something about him caught Olivia's attention. Maybe the determination in his eyes, or the way he bit his lip each time the screen flickered, refusing to give up. She found herself walking toward him before she even understood why. As she approached, someone knelt beside the boy. A tall man, maybe mid-30s, wearing a worn jacket and a gentle expression. He placed a hand on the boy's shoulder with a steadiness that radiated warmth. He didn't scold, didn't rush, didn't give up on the child's struggle. Instead, he guided the boy's hand slowly, patiently, teaching rather than fixing. Olivia stood there for a moment, longer than she should have, drawn in by something unfamiliar, softness. The man eventually looked up, and their eyes met. His name was Daniel Turner, a single father doing his best to raise his son, Ethan, after losing his wife 3 years earlier. He wasn't wealthy, powerful, or famous. He didn't care who Olivia was or what position she held. He only cared about the boy in front of him and about doing the right thing. That sincerity was so rare in Olivia's world that it almost startled her. Daniel recognized Olivia as the event sponsor and thanked her with such genuine appreciation that it disarmed her. He didn't flatter, didn't attempt small talk. He simply acknowledged the help her event brought to families like his. Something in Olivia's heart tightened, a sensation she hadn't felt in years. She watched Daniel and Ethan throughout the day. The boy was bright, curious, endlessly energetic. Daniel was patient, encouraging, attentive. They didn't have much, but they had something Olivia didn't understand at first: love, connection, presence. They had each other in a way she had never had anyone. For the first time in a long time, Olivia didn't want to leave an event early. Over the following weeks, Olivia found herself thinking about the father and son more often than she expected. She replayed the way Daniel had spoken to Ethan, the way he smiled even when he was clearly tired, the quiet strength in his eyes. She realized she missed something she had never truly known, a family, a calm place to rest her heart, a love that wasn't conditional on success. Their paths crossed again, at a charity reading event at the local library. When Daniel saw her, he greeted her with the same gentle ease, as though she were simply another person. Not a CEO whose schedule cost millions by the hour. They talked, not about business, not about strategy, but about ordinary things, about children who needed better resources, about books, about faith, about the fear of losing someone you love, and the courage it took to keep going. Olivia felt something shift inside her during that conversation. Daniel didn't ask for anything from her. He didn't want to impress her. He simply shared his world, and for the first time in her life, she felt like she was stepping into a place unguarded by expectations. But Olivia's heart wasn't ready to trust. She had built her walls for years, brick by brick, after watching her mother suffer through heartbreak after heartbreak. She had spent a lifetime believing love was a luxury she couldn't afford. She didn't know how to let someone close, didn't know how to risk the pain she had spent decades avoiding. And Daniel, though gentle, carried his own shadows. He feared failing his son, feared loving someone only to lose them, feared letting another person into the little world he had built for Ethan's sake. Yet life kept bringing them together through volunteer events, community meetings, and chance encounters that didn't feel like chance at all. Ethan adored Olivia, and she felt a tenderness toward the boy she couldn't explain. She found herself showing up for events she would have ignored before, just to see the father and son who made her feel more human than she had in years. Still, every time Daniel looked at her with warmth, Olivia felt the same old instinct rise, to run, to hide, to retreat behind her cold CEO armor. She didn't know how to be anything else. The breaking point came one evening during a winter toy drive. The event ran late, and families filtered out until only volunteers remained. Daniel and Olivia stayed behind, cleaning up stray boxes while Ethan fell asleep in a chair with a blanket draped over him. The quiet in the room was gentle, not heavy. Olivia found herself talking about her mother for the first time in years. She confessed things she had never told anyone. How she feared being vulnerable, how she feared disappointing people, how she feared loving someone only to watch life take them away. She expected judgment, or awkward silence, or polite reassurance. What she got instead was truth. Daniel looked at her with soft, steady eyes. He told her that love was always a risk, that heartbreak was always possible, but that living without love was its own kind of tragedy, a quieter, deeper one. He told her that courage wasn't about being fearless. Courage was about showing up anyway, for the people who needed you, for the people you cared about, for yourself. He said the words that would echo in her heart for months. You had everything, Olivia, except the one thing that actually fills the empty spaces. From that night on, Olivia began changing, slowly, quietly, but undeniably. She started leaving her office earlier. She spent more time with real people instead of numbers. She helped Ethan with homework. She learned to cook simple meals. She learned to laugh again. Not the polished CEO laugh, but a real, unguarded one that came from somewhere deep. Daniel changed her without trying to. He showed her a different way to live, one where strength wasn't measured in achievements, but in tenderness, patience, presence. Olivia found herself falling, not fast or recklessly, but gradually, like snow settling gently on a quiet street. But love stories are rarely simple. The world she lived in, the high-stakes, cutthroat world of corporate leadership, didn't like changes it couldn't control. Rumors began circulating. Investors questioned her priorities. Some accused her of losing focus. Olivia was forced to face a choice she had never imagined she'd have to make: protect the empire she'd built, or protect the people who had become her heart. It was Ethan, in his innocent wisdom, who helped her see clearly. One evening, while coloring at the kitchen table, he looked up at her and said that sometimes people with the biggest houses were the loneliest because they had no one to share them with. Olivia felt tears sting her eyes. She realized she had spent her life building walls instead of a home. The next morning, she made a decision that shook her company. She stepped back from certain responsibilities, delegated more, and restructured her schedule to create balance. People criticized, judged, doubted, but Olivia didn't care anymore. For the first time, she wasn't living for approval, she was living for meaning, and meaning lived in Daniel's gentle smile, in Ethan's small hand in hers, in dinners that weren't rushed, in evenings spent talking instead of calculating, in faith, hope, healing. It took months for Olivia to fully let her heart open, months of learning, unlearning, trusting, breaking, rebuilding. But the day she realized she was no longer afraid was the day she found Daniel sitting alone on a park bench, looking worried and distant. She sat beside him quietly. He confessed he feared not being enough for her, feared being a burden, feared failing her the way he feared failing Ethan. Olivia took his hand gently, and for the first time in her life, she chose love over fear. She told him he didn't need to be perfect. He just needed to be present. And in that moment, she felt the final pieces of her old armor fall away. They didn't need grand declaration. The quiet truth between them was enough. Their love grew not from dramatic moments, but from countless small ones, shared meals, shared struggles, shared prayers, shared hopes. Olivia found herself becoming someone she never believed she could be, a woman who wasn't defined by power, but by heart. Months later, as spring bloomed across the city, Olivia stood on the rooftop of her apartment, watching Daniel and Ethan laugh together as they watered small pots of flowers. The scene felt surreal, simple, ordinary, perfect. She realized that this was the life she had always wanted but had been too afraid to imagine. And she finally understood that love hadn't made her weaker. It had made her whole. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us keep creating stories that inspire and heal. Before we end, tell us in the comments, do you believe love can change a person's entire life? And with that, Olivia's story closes, not with an ending, but with a beginning filled with warmth, courage, and a love that turned a powerful CEO into something far more extraordinary, a woman who finally knew what it meant to be loved and to love in return.